Alex Pattakos, and he is the co-author of the OPA Way, Finding Meaning and Joy in Everyday Life and Work. And Alex is absolutely interesting individual. He's going to talk with us about OPA and Meaningology. So here is Alex, you guys.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me to share some brief ideas with you, and particularly at this particular time between the pandemic that's been going on, as well as obviously some of the civil strife that's happening around the world now. This is certainly a time where the search for meaning is going to be more and more an important mission for all of us. Let me start by saying that, of course, with my name, yeah, I'm of Greek heritage. And that was part of the reason why, excuse me, the OPA Way notion came about. It was partly to reconnect with my roots, and also to build on what I saw and what my wife Elaine, who's also the co-author, saw when we were in Greece. We were there particularly during the economic crisis. And what we found fascinating was that the Greeks, in spite of all the strife that they were going through, this is even before the refugee crisis entered the world and the pandemic, is that they were able to find joy and find inspiration from each other, from the environment, the sea, the mountains, obviously diets. They were just very hospitable people. And I remember being with Elaine in Greece, and we were sitting down and having something to eat and drink, and we just realized, this attitude, this philosophy of life, in spite of all the horrific things that they were experiencing, can we bottle that in some way and bring it back to North America and share it maybe with people around the world? So that's really was the driver for doing, writing the book, which, as you can see here, the OPA Way, there it is in English, with a nice picture of Santorini, which is probably one of the most familiar sites in Greece. And then it's also been published in Greek. There it is, it's emethyls OPA in Greek. And so the idea behind this was we tried to figure out what were the core elements, what were the things that were driving people's ability to be resilient, to stay engaged with life in spite of all the problems and challenges they had, to stay healthy and promote a quality of life that promoted their well-being. And then also, how would they stay not just engaged, but also be more creative and innovative in order to solve some of the problems that the country and the villages and the communities were facing. And so what we found was that there's a common Greek word, which most people have heard, particularly if you've been to a Greek restaurant. If you heard somebody drop a plate, they typically will say, OPA. And OPA also in the Germanic language, and particularly in German, means grandfather. So some people have said, well, geez, it also means grandfather. Well, that's a nice way to look at it as well, because most of us have positive images and feelings about our grandfather. But the idea behind the OPA word is that we studied its ancient roots, which go back to the writings of Homer. And based on the Greek language, it has two different connotations, almost like the yin and the yang in the Chinese language. One side of it is to celebrate life, the enthusiastic way of when you see people dancing and yelling "Opa, Opa." That's part of it. Then the other side in the Greek language version, the ancient Greek version, was watch out. Look out for not only opportunities, but look out for danger in your path. So in many respects, the Greeks in the early days of the economic crisis were practicing the celebrating life, but I think they kind of lost sight of the other side of OPA in Greek, which was the look out for the dangers of, potentially overspending, so forth and so on. So we took that and we developed an acronym, which just happens to fit the nice OPA. And we wanted to, because of the whole psychology of memory and retention, we wanted to keep things in threes. So this way people would be able to remember them more easily. And of course, with the Greek word OPA, it's a lot easier to say and to remember, regardless of your native tongue. And so part of it was that the O represented connecting authentically and meaningfully with others. And this is a very important element in terms of the meaning, because it was not only a paradigm, but you'll see as I pull this together, that OPA is actually a formula for discovering meaning in your life and in your work, et cetera, et cetera. So the O is that connectivity part, that authentic communications, authentic connections with people. It's not just, being a Facebook friend. It's not just being able to do something even on Zoom. It's, in many respects, some of the online learning thing, we have to be careful. We don't want to replace this completely with a lack of face-to-face interactions. So that's just something to keep in mind as we move forward. So the O is that. The P is engaging with deeper purpose. So the key behind this is that it's deeper purpose. We all want to have a purpose. We all want to have a reason to get up in the morning. Some of us get up in the morning and we want to, we drive to work, we make ourselves a coffee, we go get a coffee, whatever it may be. But purpose is an important element. But the deeper purpose becomes even more relevant for us existentially, because we want people to feel that they can look at themselves, get to know themselves, and try to find something that resonates with their core essence, their true nature. And then the A, which is very, very much a Greek phenomenon, if you will, is that the Greeks are really good at sharing their feelings openly, but they embrace life, all of life, the ups, the downs, the joys, the sorrows, with attitude. It's a resilient, positive, gracious attitude. So we took the O, P, and A, others, purpose, attitude, and we came up with this OPA acronym, which there are chapters in the book, The OPA Way, that describe each of those, describe our journey. Partly the book is, and it's probably of all the things I've written, and I've written a lot, the piece that I'm probably most proud of, because it not only reflects my family and Greek heritage, but more importantly, it's a representation of a travel, an odyssey. We actually start the book with kind of our return to Ithaca. It's an odyssey. It's part love story. It's part travel log. When you read it, it gives you some, maybe an incentive to, if not go to Greece in reality as a real physical trip, especially today, but virtually you want to do that. And so that was really a powerful new paradigm for us, because OPA became a formula for meaning. So in other words, the search for meaning, and this is an extension, this is how we took it to the next level by integrating it with the work of Viktor Frankl, is that we put the OPA concept into the third edition of our book, Prisoners of Our Thoughts. And this is the book that was based on, and personally encouraged me to write, by Viktor Frankl back in the very late 1990s. And so when I was with him at his home in Vienna, Austria. And so that particular thing tried to distill what are the core elements, the core principles of Viktor Frankl's logotherapy and existential analysis school of thought. And what we've done with the third edition of Prisoners of Our Thoughts, which is now in over 20 languages, is we've added the OPA concept, 3 new chapters, one for O, P, and A, kind of a thing, for life, work, and society. You can see everything is in 3s here for me. And we added that not to in any way take away from logotherapy, but to show how the OPA concept is closely aligned to what Viktor Frankl was talking about, as well as how the OPA concept can be applied in everyday life and work in a generic sense, as opposed to, the OPA Way book is actually in Greece. And so you don't have to be Greek, you don't have to be in Greece to practice OPA. And we've lectured about OPA, we've spoken about OPA around the world. We brought it to Hong Kong, obviously way before the problems that Hong Kong's facing today. And we have, young children who still follow us on Twitter who attended some of our sessions we've had in some of the local public schools in Hong Kong. And even though they weren't able to, English was a second, maybe even a third language, they were able to say OPA, they were able to, really understand what the concept was. And we were using OPA at that time to help promote an opportunity for kids to learn how to become more resilient, how to stop bullying, how to prevent themselves from, going into some sort of depressed state because there was so much stress going on. There's obviously more now. And so that's where the OPA thing came about. Did you want to add something?
I just think it's fascinating to hear you speak, and just how simple it is for anyone to really take this acronym of OPA, others, purpose, attitude.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
Yeah, so relevant, so relevant right now.
Yeah, and so so the idea is that if you read the OPA Way, you get an idea of the history and really the roots of OPA came from. So that's important. And then if you read Prisoners of Our Thoughts, you see how we apply it in the context of Viktor Frankl's logotherapy and existential analysis as an extension of psychotherapy, because we really don't want, one of the things that Viktor Frankl wanted to do is he wanted his ideas to become mainstream. He did not, want to keep everything kind of closed in a counselor's, psychotherapist, therapist office on a one-on-one relationship. He wanted the everyday person to understand that the search for meaning was part of our humanness, and this is something that we should be all striving for. It was actually healthy to ask questions like Socrates did in ancient Greece when he said, know thyself, when he said, the unexamined life is not worth living. This was all part, because Viktor Frankl drew a lot of his inspiration from the ancient Greek philosophers as well. So,
okay, we're going to stop right there, and I will link these books below.